Welcome back, Lorcana players. It's Poisonous. Today's video, we're going to talk about the set champs that I played in this weekend. I played in a 25-person set champs. It was best of 3, 5 rounds, cut to top 8. I was able to finally take home the championship playmat. I'm really happy about how I performed. I didn't drop a single game all day. I think my deck list is well tuned. I played really well. I wanted to share the list with you, talk about the matchups that I had, and we'll dive into kind of some of the cards that you want to keep and how to play those matchups. Face cam, this is something new if you've been following my videos for a while. I haven't had a face cam on here. Recently started live streaming. Last week I started streaming on Twitch and on YouTube Live, and I'm going to keep streaming. If you haven't subscribed to my videos already, hit that subscribe button down below. I'm also putting a link to my Twitch channel in the description to the video. It'd be really helpful if you could follow the link to Twitch, follow me on there, and help get that channel off the ground for me as well. We appreciate the support. Let's take a look at the list and dive in.
The deck runs 4 copies of Little Cinderella. She's a staple in every Steel Song deck. We're running the Robin Hood shift package, so Robin Hood, Beloved Outlaw, and Champion of Sherwood. I'm running Ursula. I still have kind of mixed feelings between Ursula and Troubadour, but this weekend I got way more value out of Ursula being able to heal with Rapunzel. That extra card did, I feel like, actually make a difference, and the resist on Troubadour didn't seem like it would be that impactful in a lot of the matchups that I played. So I was happy to have run Ursula, and I think that there's a good use case to run her over Troubadour for the extra card on the healing with Rapunzel, as long as you're not running the Bianca ally package. If you're running the allies, then you need to run the Troubadour. We run 4 copies of Smee. He's an aggro threat that also trades nicely. Ariel to dig for songs. Lawrence, because he's a bruiser that can take down characters, and he's a great way to heal with Rapunzel. And he quests for 2, so in some matchups he's really aggressive. 4 copies of Pete, because he's required in every steel deck, because shutting down actions is very strong. 3 copies of Prince Naveen. I think that this card is probably the standout of the deck. Being able to cast songs early, or to play it on 4 and cast Zeus at the same time to build that 2 questing body is extremely powerful, but being able to get a Whole New World or grab your sword out a turn early also makes a big difference, and it's very good into other steel decks. We're running 4 copies of Rapunzel. She's our backup or primary card, draw engine, depending how you want to look at it. 1 copy of Ariel Sonic Warrior. This card actually was really helpful, and I could see a case for running 2 copies of her. Against other steel decks, the 8 health is very, very tanky, and the ability to sing a song or play a song and then pay the cost to do 3 damage to another character was very good into purple steel to get more ways to completely remove everything off their board with less songs. Running 2 copies of Big Cinderella. Just like the Ariel, she's really good into certain matchups where she can challenge readied characters. You can stop them from being able to win if they're a more aggressive deck. And she's a really hard card for steel decks to remove because of the resist 2. For our song package, we run 2 copies of World's Greatest Criminal Mind, 3 copies of Storm. I've come down to 3. I think that 4 is too many because there's certain matchups where it's just not good, and it is uninkable, so it's taking up a spot that you'd want to run something else like Grab Your Sword. We're of course running 4 copies of Strength because it's the best song. 4 copies of Zeus. This is to help deal with big characters and threats like Shark, but also locations can be a problem, and the Zeus can do a significant amount of work against a location. 4 copies of Whole New World, and 1 copy of Grab Your Sword. So the list did feel quite smooth. I didn't find it was having any problems with uninkables. It does run 15 uninkables, which is about as many as you'd ever want, but it operates more smoothly with the Prince Naveen. I had to decide between Naveen or the Daisy package, and instead of focusing on being more aggro, this deck is kind of more high mid-range to give it better matchups into the steel decks. It does give you a little bit of a worse matchup into red-blue specifically because there's no Daisy. you gotta rely on your like Smee and your Lawrence in that matchup. That's the deck list. Let's take a look at the set champs matchups that I had on Saturday. The set champs was on May 10th at the Comic Hunter in Moncton. There were 25 players. It was 5 rounds, best of 3, cut to top 8. In the first round, I played against Ruby Amethyst Evasives. I did win 2-0 here. I was able to go fast and block on turn 7 with Pete. In round 2, I played a very close game against Amethyst Steel Aggro. Game 1, I was on the play. I was able to win pretty convincingly. In game 2, they were all the way up to 17 and they had 2 goats on board. And the only way that I could kind of clear their board and prevent them from winning was to cast a whole new world. And I was able to kill everything on board, leaving them at 19. And I was just very fortunate that in the 7 new cards they got, they didn't get any burn, they didn't get a goat or rose or anything else to do instant lore gain, and we were able to win the next turn because they couldn't close it out that turn, so we got the 2-0 there. In round 4, went up against Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggro. That matchup is pretty good for Steel Song. They have a lot of small characters that we're able to just pick off with our songs. We slowly build a wider board and then just quest out while controlling them and keeping them off the board. In round 5, I would have been matched up against a Ruby Sapphire list. It was like a DKP action shark build, but this was a list being played by my friend and we decided to do an ID into the top cut. I know that intentional draws aren't always popular, but it's a long day and I wanted to get food, and since we are friends, we thought that we could just wait until top cut and probably play each other, which ended up happening. So I went into the top cut with first seed at 401. In the first round of the top cut, I went up against the Amethyst Steel mid-range deck that I played against in round 3. This time I was able to 2-0 again. Being in first seed means that I'm on the play in all these matchups, which is very strong for Steel Song. When you're playing Steel Song, definitely playing for seed or trying to get the best seed you can makes a huge difference in the outcomes at top cut, because the deck does have, a bit of a play draw disparity where it's decent on the draw, but it's really powerful on the play. At top 4, I matched into my friend playing the Ruby Steel DKP list. I was able to win in 2. The first game I went really fast and just played Pete's at the right time to close it out on lore. The second game was very tough being on the draw, but I was able to eventually get there. Kind of came down to a battle of top decks. I was fortunate that they didn't get much card draw towards the end of the game, and I was able to just slowly quest my way up to 20, getting one character at a time and then losing it, and just kind of fighting my way there, saving some removal for critical cards like Shark or Maui to close out that game. In the finals, I went up against a very interesting Amber Ruby Mufasa deck. This deck is probably not something you see a lot in the meta, but it does well into slower decks like the Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, and they played very well. They made it all the way to the finals. We did win 2-0. I think that this is also a pretty favorable matchup for Steel Song. Their characters to generate card draw are Mother Gothel and the Mulan that damages itself. So they're relying on characters that basically are at 1 health in order to build a board and draw cards. And that's really bad into Steel Song because Steel Song has so many songs that can easily ping these characters down. Even Grab Your Sword is able to kind of swoop in and wipe out a whole bunch at once. So we just keep them off the board, preventing them from building up any combos. And then we just have such a wide board that we can quest to victory before they can do anything else. But it was really well played. I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of people from different provinces. So people from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI all played in this tournament. So it's nice to see people that I've played against in the past and other people in the local Lorcana community come out and have a really good time. It was a really well hosted event. So shout out to the Comic Hunter Moncton. Here is the screenshot of the Melee tournament. So you can see here that I was not defeated in any games. The only non-wins that I have were the intentional draw in round 5, but I 2-0'd every matchup that I had. So it felt really, really good. And if you're looking for a deck to play, I think that Steel Song is really strong in the meta right now. and I would definitely recommend taking this deck to your set champs. If you have a lot of red-blue, it might be tough, but you're not always guaranteed to match into them, and it's not an unwinnable match. You can still get there, but if you have a varied field, it definitely feasts on a lot of decks that are being played right now. In the Steel Song versus Ruby Amethyst matchup, this one is pretty important that you just go faster than your opponent. You want to build out a wide board and prevent them from getting a wide board. A lot of their attacks require them to have multiple characters on board if they're using like Fox and Crab, or they're using cards like Brawl, which are taking up a whole turn to do one action. So you can pretty easily go wide and outpace this deck. You want to have your Cinderella to ping their small characters off the board. Ursula is also helpful because she can sing along Came Zeus and take out the bigger characters that they play on like turn 3, 4, and 5. And importantly here, you want to have a Pete to block the Be Prepared. Purple decks struggle a bit into a wide board because they often rely on challenging characters and bouncing, and they want to have tempo, and Steel Song is very good at taking away tempo from opponents because they lose the characters that they need on board to keep replaying their stuff. The thing that Ruby Amethyst has to try and come back against that is Be Prepared, so you want to make sure you just save your Pete for that turn. And this matchup is one where I think the Whole New World is quite powerful. If you dump your whole hand early, especially if you go like a turn 3 Shift Robin Hood, sing Whole New World, oftentimes they're only still playing one card per turn, so you can completely refill your hand, go wider, and then start Pete blocking the Be Prepared. And this matchup I think is quite winnable on the play or draw, as long as you keep your card draw going, so getting Rapunzel down or getting to wheel when it's advantageous for you to do so. Take advantage of the fact that they draw a lot of cards in purple, so if you're down to 2 cards and they have 6 in hand, then you can just wheel and get like a 5-card swing on card advantage. Cards to watch out for from them, of course, are the Brawl. They're going to try and brawl your Ariel, take away your ability to do your wheel singer. Peter Pan. The Peter Pan comes out on turn 3, can rush a Cindy that's exerted after singing a song, but importantly, the Peter Pan gives their turn 4 and turn 5 and 6 cards potentially rush as well if they're playing like Genie, and then the Elsa already has rush, and then on 6 they play the Shark. So getting rid of Peter Pan I think is important. If you know they have the Peter Pan, you want to save a song to get rid of it as soon as possible, because otherwise they're going to start getting extra tempo on their plays that are normally a bit slow. The Be Prep you got to block, and then Fox is another way that they can kill our characters like Cinderella and Ursula. So just be mindful of what you're leaving exerted when they have characters on board, because the Fox can come in and clean up your characters and leave a body behind that can be annoying to deal with. Against Purple Steel Aggro, cards that you want to have are Cinderella. You want to be able to ping their small characters so they can't get extra card draw if they're playing like Chernobog's Followers, and Magic Broom. Killing those with Storm is really good. Killing the Diablo not as good because it's basically a guaranteed card draw. It's easier to challenge and get rid of him and not waste a song, but you want to pick the ones that are going to give them card draws. The Whole New World here I think is generally a bad play, especially if you don't have a lot of characters on board, because they often run out of cards in their hand very quickly because they're playing through their cards and they're using Cobra to discard and gain lore. They're playing multiple characters per turn, and you just fill their hand with more burn cards if you do a Whole New World. So I think it's important to prioritize Rapunzel and finding ways to get the Rapunzel to draw you cards. This is a matchup where I think the Ursula is better than the Troubadour because she gets you that extra card draw. If you challenge and kill Pete or something like that, then you can get that extra card draw with the Rapunzel. And the longer you can go without doing a wheel, the better your chances are of winning this matchup. Pete also pretty good here. He's a 3/3 body, so that's useful. He's a singer, but he prevents cards like Gathering Knowledge and Friends on the Other Side, if they're running those, to stop them from getting that last bit of lore or refilling their hand. On the other side, the cards that you need to watch out for, Giant Cobra, because he has instant lore gain. You need to know that if they're getting up there in lore, that cards like this can get them to the finish line. So it's really important to control the board as much as possible even if it seems a little bit inefficient, because sometimes you let them get to like 14 and suddenly they're at 20. You gotta try and stop them and slow them down every step of the way. The Pete, they do like to play Pete to interrupt the songs, which can protect their characters for a turn, but they like to replay Pete if they're playing like a snake. So you want to try and kill the Pete whenever possible so it can't get replayed. If they have 2 3-cost characters or 2 different bodies that I could consider trading into, I try and prioritize removing the Pete when playing purple steel, because you don't want them to like repeat you. It's very effective against the steel song deck because we rely so much on songs and actions that we need to make sure that they are getting as little Pete value as we can. They also have Goat and Gathering Knowledge as more burn. And another card is Dock. You know, they get down to their last card, they play Dock, they draw 2 more. So it can be sometimes hard to completely starve them of resources, but you want to do whatever you can to limit the amount of card draw that they have, and that means not playing a whole new world unless absolutely necessary. I did have to play it in one of my games against this deck, and I was just fortunate that they didn't get any burn because they were actually sitting at 19 lore when I passed turn back to them. And with the 7 cards they had and the extra card draw they got, they still didn't get an extra lore to close out the game. That would have only been game 2, so I think, you know, we could still get there in game 3. But it was nice to wheel, wipe the board, and then hang on and win the next turn anyway. The purple steel mid-range is kind of similar, but I think that this matchup is a little bit better for us because they don't quest out as fast, so our controlling aspect of our deck will kind of go above them. They can't necessarily get under us as easily. They're going to try and fight for tempo and fight for board control, but they're still using purple, so the same strategy applies, that if you don't have characters, purple decks, you know, really scary cards like Fox aren't as good. So in this matchup, of course, you want your Cinderella to ping down their small characters, get rid of their Turnabog followers. Also very helpful in like out Smee with 1 damage after he's quested, can be killed with Storm. So she gets a lot of value here, but the Robin Hood is also good because when you shift him, his body is quite difficult for Steel to deal with. In this matchup, I think that a whole new world is good. You build out your board, you know, you have 2 or 3 singers, you cast Whole New World, get into your new hand. Those singers can use the songs from your new hand to get the rest of the board control that's needed, and they can't build out a wide enough board again after to really punish us as much. So Whole New World is fine in this matchup. Rapunzel's still good, but in this matchup, I'd say you don't have to be afraid of wheeling. The Aerial Sonic Warrior, also very strong in this matchup because her 8 health is very difficult for them to deal with. She can't easily die to most of the things that they're going to play or have on board. And the 8 health is also really great for Rapunzel because even if she makes a couple trades, she's usually still alive, and then you can heal her back up. But you play a song, you pay 2 ink, and you deal 3 damage to something else. Well, their deck has a lot of 3 health characters, so it's a really convenient amount to take out a lot of things that they've played. The Pete is big in this matchup. They are running some songs. They usually have Strength, Friends, and potentially a Long Cane Zeus. So you can block those with the Pete. In their side of things, you need to watch out for the fact that they do have Strength. So if they play a turn 1 character and then a couple characters on turn 2, or like go 1, 2, 3 into Pete, well, now when they play a 4th character, Pete can sing the Strength and kill pretty much anything that we would have on board by turn 4 or 3. So they have options there, so it can be helpful to like kind of Pete back to them if they play a Pete, so they can't sing that song until you remove some of their characters. The Fox, also be wary of him. He can challenge and kill our Exerted Cinderellas and Ariels and Ursula, so very efficient. And of course they can pick up Pete, so whenever possible, if you think that they're gonna be able to replay Pete, you wanna like, you know, sing a song, remove their Pete. If they had a Pete on board and a Smee on board, I would oftentimes prioritize like singing a song to remove the Pete if they're not in danger of winning with the Smee lore, because the Pete being replayed is absolutely frustrating to the strategy of our deck. I think that this match is definitely favored for us though. They don't have as many tools as we do, unless they can, you know, go wide and remove all of our stuff and basically steal the tempo by like peating and then removing our characters. it should be something that isn't too bad. I would say just be careful if your characters don't need to be exerted, don't leave them exerted. Questing just to gain, 1 or 2 lore and giving up all your singers leaves you in a situation where you're not able to control the board once you wheel, and that is a losing strategy. So don't exert unless you have to until you get good board control in this matchup or they're dwindling on resources. Against Hyper Aggro, so in this case I played against Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggro. The cards you want to prioritize are your singers, so Cinderella and Ursula. They have cards like Daisy Duck, which has 4 health, so the songs that Cindy sings usually can't deal with her. But a turn 2 Ursula, and then she can sing Zeus, so after you play Ariel on 3, or, if you already have the Zeus in hand, she can clean up Daisy Duck. But Cindy is great at removing cards like Piglet, and their other small characters if they're running like Lilo, Maleficent. Any of those small double questers are easily pinged down by Cindy. I find the Lawrence also very useful in this matchup. The Lawrence is able to take out a Daisy in one swing, but he also can help deal with bodyguards if they're playing like the Donald Duck that has bodyguard and gives +1 questing, or if they're playing the Prince, the 0/5 bodyguard. He has ways to remove those characters quite efficiently, and if you do trade into something with strength, he takes damage, and then you can refill your hand with Rapunzel if you start to run out of resources. This is a matchup where a Whole New World is bad. I don't think you want to play the Whole New World here because they oftentimes run out of cards very quickly in this matchup, especially if you're taking everything off their board. And then refilling them would allow them to do like a complete hand dump the next turn, and if you don't have answers for it right away, that can push them to the edge of winning. So on their side, they also might have burn cards like Goat. You just be mindful of that. You can't let them get too close to the finish line. You might think that you have time, but then they start playing instant lore burn cards, and then suddenly you're not able to close out the game. We can only remove characters. We don't have a way to reduce their lore or stop them from questing other than removal. So you want to be careful and just consider that they could have those burn cards in their deck. So those were my matchups from the first 4 rounds. Round 5, I was going to play against Red-Blue, but we did intentionally draw. However, I played the deck at top 4, so we'll talk about that matchup. At top 8, I played against the same Amethyst Steel mid-range deck from round 3, so we don't need to go over that matchup again. So at top 4, I played against the DKP style blue-red deck. This is another matchup where I think the Whole New World is bad. You only want to play that in case of emergency. It's a Hail Mary because things are already going badly. But once your opponent ramps, this deck doesn't have as much card draw now that Hiram is gone, so giving them a Whole New World and completely refilling their hand is gonna hurt you because they can just take way more advantage of the cards that they get than we can. In this matchup, you want to prioritize your Smee, your Lawrence, and your Pete. The Smee and Lawrence because they don't die to Sisu, and they do quest for 2. We don't run a crazy amount of 2 questers in this deck. Naveen is also good here. He comes in, casts a song, and then he leaves the 2 questing body, the same as like a Smee basically. And then the Pete has to be held very strategically in this matchup. The Pete can pretty much disrupt on any turn because they do play a lot of actions. They want to sing How Far I'll Go. They want to play Develop Your Brain, Vision of the Future, all of that stuff. But our main worry is the Be Prepared. We want to go as wide as possible and try and get close to 20 as we can very quickly, because once they get to their top end, it gets much more difficult for us. So you want to save the Pete for the turn that they're going to be able to play Be Prepared. Ideally, if you have multiple Petes, then yeah, you could go like the turn before that or the turn after that to prevent it on the follow-up turn. But if they're ramping, they're likely going to be able to play Sisu as well and remove some of our smaller characters. So a well-timed Pete is good. And I think that when you're trying to close the game, like in one of the games I played, I was at 17 and I had the Pete in hand and I just wasn't playing him because I was waiting for an accompanying body to go with him. And then I finally drew a Smee, so then I played Smee and Pete in the same turn, and they didn't have a way to remove them or deal with them, so then I was able to just win. But if I played the Pete on its own, yeah, sure, he would gain 1 lore, but then I wouldn't have the Pete, and then the turn that I played the Smee, they'd be able to remove it. So you just want to really manage your peat carefully in this matchup, because sometimes it's the only way that you're going to get to close out the game against a deck like this. In their hand, they're going to have cards like Big Sisu, which is absolutely devastating to Steel Song. This card alone makes this matchup very hard to win. A Pirate's Life. I was fortunate that my opponent didn't draw into a Pirate's Life in the 2 games that we played. You know, it's nice that I get to like 15 or 17 really fast, but if they start taking away my lore and dragging me away from the finish line, then it's very hard to close out that match. Be prepared. Obviously, this is the big board wipe you need to play around. If you know that you can't protect against a Be Prepared, and you think that it's coming next turn, sometimes you just have to not play more characters. You have to slow down. Because if you run out of resources, that's just as bad as losing the characters on board. So you go a little bit slower. You got to manage your resources against that. And the Shark. The Shark is scary because it lets them bring back actions, which can remove your stuff and, you know, slow you down more. So you want to have that Along Came Zeus or the World's Greatest Criminal Mind. You want to store those. Even if there's something else tempting to kill with it, if you think the shark is coming or the shark's on board, you need to make sure you save something to deal with those. Because once you have a shark that you can't kill, it basically means that you're not allowed to quest anymore, because you can't give them that advantage. And then they can just kind of stall out and win the game. So you want to try and keep those answers for shark in your hand. So be mindful of the amount of cards they have in their hand and whether you think that you can deal with the threats that they have while trying to progress forward. My final matchup of the day was against Amber, Ruby, Mufasa. This is an interesting deck, not something that you necessarily expect to see, but it does have good matchups into certain decks that are in the meta. So it's nice to see diversity of play and interesting lines and decks being built. This is a matchup that I think is a bit favored for Steel Song because their deck relies on characters to build a board, to draw cards. As long as you keep removing their characters, it's very easy to take over the game and basically starve them of resources. And they don't have a way to deal with like a wide board. So it's similar to like the red-purple matchup, where you just build your board wider, you keep refilling your hand with resources when needed, and be mindful of like a couple of different threats that they have, and you can win this matchup. Cinderella, really strong here. Their turn 1 play is going to be something like Card Soldiers or Mulan, who comes in with only 1 health, and they want to play Rapunzel to heal, same with Mother Gothel. You can ping those characters down. The Gaston is really critical to their strategy. Some decks can't answer the Gaston very easily, but as long as we play an Ursula on 2, we have Along Came Zeus, we can take it out so it can't play those bigger characters for cheap. They can't get to like Mufasa and Lady Tremaine on turn 4. So that's one way that you can kind of steal the game from them, is just taking away the card draw options for Rapunzel and the cheapening of big characters with Gaston. You also have to watch out for the Mulan. The Mulan can shift and it challenges one character but does, 5 damage to other characters, so you can suddenly get your board wiped if you're not paying attention. So it's important not to exert those characters when it's not, safe to do so. You have to respect that there are threats in their deck that can fight back against you like that. You just want to control the board, refill your hand, and don't be afraid to wheel here. Their deck has a curve into like big characters. They thrive when they play, a curve deck where it's like 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-4. If they can't do that, they're only playing like 1 character at a time each turn. Then you wheel and they can still usually only play like 1 or 2 things. So it's not actually, that devastating for you. But the fact that we get a whole bunch of cards, we get more removal, we can play like 3 or 4 characters and now they can't deal with them. And you can just start questing out to win pretty fast. Makes this matchup good for Steel Song. So those are the matchups that I had. That's kind of the breakdown of how to think about the deck and what you're playing against. Always be mindful of your resources, whether it's beneficial for you to wheel or if your opponent would benefit more than you, or, sometimes you just have to because you don't have a choice. They're already winning and you're not going to get answers if you don't. But it's kind of the thinking of Steel Song, and I think that with a lot of the decks in the meta, Steel Song is in a really good place right now. This deck is kind of teched to be better against Steel Song than some other variants. By running like Grab Your Sword, you can deal with, their 1-drops. You can deal with a wider board a bit better. And the Naveen, I think, is also really good against other Steel Song decks. So if you're going to play against other people that are running Steel Song and they're running a build that doesn't have the Naveens, they're running like the Daisy, I think that this matchup would be favorable for us. So if you're going to a set champs this weekend, try this deck out. Let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching the video, and thanks to everyone who came out to play at Comic Hunter. I had a really good time. If you're checking out this video for the first time, subscribe to my channel, follow the link, follow me on Twitch. I really appreciate all the support, everyone. Cheers.